at behind me is a little oasis. There's no water there, but it's just this one little stretch of red sand desert amongst all these sage plains around here. And up along this ridge that you see right here, a few months back, I went on I put myself into a survival situation for 3 days, and I covered probably close to 40 miles, and going across that ridge up into the sage plains, which is probably at like 4,500 feet, passed up through into some mountain passes and whatnot. But in any case, I saw this little red desert spot down here, and I thought it was really cool, and I was sad I didn't get to see it, but here I am. I got my pack, my longbow, whatever else, and I'm gonna head down there, scout it out, maybe find some cool resources. For right now, I'm gonna go ahead and test out this new sling that I made up last night. Some twisted paracord. Got a little sliding wrist lanyard for it, because I find it's a lot more comfortable than having like a pinky ring, or finger ring, excuse me. Without further ado, let's get on down to the desert. Alright, starting to make my way down to the red sand area. Got a little tiny wash right here, and it actually looks like this slick rock is some real subtle remnants of water. Got some moisture here. It's probably just from leftover like rainfall or something, soaked into the rock. I'd say there's probably no water here. Even if I was to dig, it's too rocky. Oh, you know what, actually? Huh. There's actually a good little bit of moisture you can see in the sand here. So that's a potential presence of, moisture at that point. So there could be water way down in there, but you're not talking for like a good, 4 or 5 feet, maybe even more potentially, to get down to it if you even do at all. It's always a risk versus reward kind of thing. I was walking along and I just started to notice these coyote tracks. I heard some pheasants when I was up along the ridge. It was way off from where I am, but between that and this looks like prime rabbit country right here. I reckon they were filling their belly up. And what do you know? Where we find coyotes, we find cottontails. There's also jackrabbits out here, but these are a little bit too small to be jackrabbits. This here is a federa, otherwise known as Mormon tea. Beyond its antioxidant properties and whatnot, it's used as an alternative source of caffeine, pretty much. You can make a really strong tea out of it. It's not like horrible tasting, but you probably want to add some like honey or something to it if you want to make it actually taste kind of like tea you're probably used to drinking. And it gives you quite a boost of energy. I've used it when I've been at work on like shift duties, and it works pretty dandy. Alright, I was going to keep on hiking a bit more over that way, but as I was walking by, I spooked up a cottontail, and I kind of want some rabbit meat. So I'm going to drop my pack, hydrate a little bit, get my longbow strung up, and see if I can't go find that critter. Alright, here we have an older greasewood. The bark here that I pulled off of this, it's good for tinder and whatnot. But the main thing is the wood itself. You get like a nice straight little shoot of it. It's not really good for arrows, shafts and such, but for foreshafts, for arrows, or for darts, for atlatls, it's really dense and it works nicely. And then these tiny little leaves here, you go ahead and get yourself a bed of coals from a fire. You go ahead and put a good glob of these on top of those coals. You with a little cup, you go ahead and catch the soot from those leaves burning. You can add a little bit of water or oil, or fat, whatever you want to it, and makes good tattoo ink. Alright, I just came across this beautiful stand of yuccas. And we still have some really strong, still alive flower stalks here that would make amazing angel kits. I'm not going to take the live ones for right now because I want to keep them as a teaching resource if I bring students out into this little area. But with these dead stalks, like this one looks really nice to me. I think I'm going to go ahead and harvest this. And it's looking like I'm probably not going to be able to get a rabbit since it's becoming around just past midday. And I'm not seeing too much more action at all. Very little sign on the ground. That might have just been a little fluke with that one that I saw, and that jumped down into a burrow, so I wasn't going to go chasing after it because I don't really need the meat right now. So, all else fails, I'll go ahead and make a handle from the land. Alright, so I have the yucca stalks I collected earlier, and when you have a nice big long yucca stalk like this, you can go ahead and use the bottom part of the stalk, all the way at the base, but closer to the bottom, that's thicker, for your hearth board, and then this area, further up along towards the top, is what you can use for your spindle. However, in this case, while I could get a hearth board off of this, I'd prefer it to be a little bit thicker and just better material overall, because this is like really close to the base. It's kind of pithy, so what I did is I cut this other stalk that I can still get a thicker diameter handle spindle out of this top part, or even a hearth board potentially for like a smaller set. But in this case, I have a nice thicker piece of yucca here for my hearth board, and I'm going to go ahead and use this thinner straight section because that's just my preference. I prefer like pinky thick spindles. In any case, when you find your stalk, you're probably wondering, where can I use material for good spindles or hearth boards? The main thing you gotta worry about is the integrity of it, especially with dead stalks. They don't really have as much rigidity as the freshly cut dry stalks do once you dry them out over a period of a few days. So what you can do is just go ahead and take your hand, grip the stalk, and just go along with your thumb. If you can go ahead and break it by pressing your thumb, then it's probably no good. You see this top part here, it's starting to get a little bit harder for me to break, but it's still not great. So okay, so now we're getting to the diameter where I can start using this stuff, but this is really wonky right here, and I'm not doing a composite hand drill where I take like a little plug, which is just any type of piece of wood that you carve, you put it into a host shaft, like force shaft on an arrow or an atlatl dart. But in any case, what I'm going to do is that I found a nice section that I like, so I'm going to go ahead and take my knife and find where I want to cut it, which is probably right around here. And the way I like doing it is I put the blade with the edge facing upwards, I put my thumb across from it, not directly on top of it, and I just put downward pressure and I score along the stalk, just going the circular motion. And it's kind of like you cut a piece of pipe, and it just makes it so that way it has a very clean cut. You don't have to worry about any potential splinters or anything like that. There you go, you see? No effort at all. Do the same now for this bottom section, and I think we're going to probably cut it right around where it starts to drift off on one side. This is a little bit of a thinner, shorter spindle, excuse me, but that's no issue for me. I am pretty used to using shorter spindles. The key with using a shorter spindle, and that's something between, I consider like 7 or 8 inches up to like 14 inches, is when you get to spindles that short, you don't have as much room to do like actual passes down the spindle, so then you have to get pretty good at floating. See, no issue at all. So now what I'm gonna do is, my hands were a little bit tougher back in the day when I was doing this constantly. I would have no problem doing this, but my hands are a little soft at the moment from not consistently doing this. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the time, take the back of my knife and just scrape it, split the spine, and make it all nice and smooth. Do the same down here. Now I'm just going to gently go along and chamfer this, where I'm going to put it into the hearth board. And I'm going to go ahead then and make a little divot at the bottom here. That just reduces unnecessary friction. That doesn't actually help out with getting your lumber. While the sand is pretty dry, I'm going to make sure that when I get my pieces all ready to go, I stick them down in the sand facing upwards. That way, if the sand or whatever soil I was on was damp or sopping wet, it would not affect the actual fire lighting areas as much. And then I have a hearth board here. I think we're going to cut it probably right around here. This part doesn't really matter too much. I can just shave it right off. Get rid of this little bit here we don't need. I have this piece of Troyer cactus for my chopping block. Not that I really need to like chop out a heartboard with this. You can do this with a, you can do it with stone tools, but you can use it with a tiny little pocket knife or something if you need to as well. It's not like you need to use this big knife, but a big knife can do everything a little knife can do and more, but a little knife cannot do everything a big knife can do. But a little knife can do little knife tasks a lot better than a big knife. So what I'm doing with a hearth board, and this goes for any bit of friction fire, doesn't matter if it's bow drill or hand drill. I'm basically just making a board. If it was a larger scale piece, or if it was like from a proper limb or log from, I don't know, like one of these juniper trees or something, then I would actually be like planing out a board pretty much with my knife. And it's kind of in the case what I'm doing with this too, but it's more so just making 2 flat sides, and then afterwards I just go ahead and take a little bit off of the other sides, not to make it like squared off flat necessarily, but just enough to make it a little bit more board-like. It's a tiny bit of a different animal when you're dealing with flower stalks versus like a real piece of wood. Alright, now I got my hearth board. I'm going to see how I like it with it just nestling itself on the ground. I have these sticks down here because the sand's very soft, so I just want something hard underneath to keep this from sinking so much. But I think it's probably going to be more stable there. I'm going to just go ahead and do some quick little adjustments to make sure this thing doesn't fall as much. Alrighty. So there. Go ahead and make my little divot. That, just take the head of your knife and make a little hole. You're not really trying to like bore an actual hole through the wood. It's more so you're just making a divot or impression, just enough so that way the tip of your spindle that you're going to be using as the bottom end of your drill can fit into it. Alright, I like that. Alright, so when I'm making the notch in my hearth board, the main thing you want to kind of take away from this is that I'm making a shape that you would have with, like, if you cut out a piece of pie or cake from a whole cake or pie. A V-notch is another way to put it in other terms. And I'm making sure with this notch that I'm tapering it so that way as I go down towards the bottom of the notch, so from the hole to the bottom of your hearth board, it widens out. That makes it so that way as you're drilling, you'll have more room for all that powder that you're creating by drilling through the board with your spindle. It'll collect down there, and it means that you'll have better airflow and you'll get a bigger ember, or at least have more fuel for it and let it grow. Alright, here we go. So right now I'm burning in my hearth board. I have my hole, that little divot pre-drilled. I have my spindle, so I'm just gonna put that in there, and all I'm gonna do is just start spinning a little bit, putting some downward pressure in, and I'm not trying to get an ember right now. All I'm doing is just getting that hole a tiny bit charred and just heating it up. And more so than anything else, just getting it well defined to the full diameter of the spindle. A good rule of thumb that I like to do is once I start to see that I have smoke, especially now since it's like properly burnt in, you're good with the burning in process and you can go ahead and carve your notch. And we have an ember. So I'm going to keep the video rolling right now because I want to demonstrate a point that you don't need to rush this in any capacity. In fact, it's very much beneficial to let your ember grow a bit. Oh, excuse me. use this time, as long as you don't have any issues with precipitation or wind potentially taking away your ember. Calm down. Be cool, calm, collected, and just take deep breaths in and out, and just make sure you're all groovy before you get on with actually blowing in the flame. Alright, so I have my tinder bundle ready to go. I'm not going to bring my ember to the tinder bundle and bring my tinder bundle to the ember, because at the end of the day, this ember is my baby. You want to treat it like it's a newborn infant, preferably your own kid, maybe. And the whole point about that is just making sure you really treat it carefully. It's fragile, it's a delicate life. Sometimes when you leave it like this though, it can get a little bit stuck to your knife. We have flame. So once you get your tinder bundle, you want to kind of turn it pretty much upside down, or at least halfway. That lets it climb. I can tell some of this juniper bark is actually a little bit damp. This is not immediately going up in flames. It's kind of smoldering a little bit. When you get your fire going like this at this point, you want to make sure your set stays away from the flame, but a good idea is to preemptively dry it out, because then you'll be better off when you have to make your fire next time. Here's what I was talking about with the hearth board. Here we go, camera's focusing. You can see how I tapered it. Narrow at the top, wider towards the bottom. Alright, now for my tinder bundle, or bird's nest, whichever way you want to call it. It really doesn't need to be anything crazy. You can totally make really fancy, well-constructed tinder bundles, and if it's really something that's life or death, like you are in a survival situation like I put myself in, you know, it takes the time to really do like a nice job. Make sure, more than anything, you want to make sure you have the layers all consistently done, and it's not too coarse towards where you're going to put the ember. So it goes finest materials right where the ember is going to sit, and then as you get further out to the outside of the nest, it gets coarser and coarser. So actually a little bit more like fuel wood at that point. What you want to do pretty much is just rake it around for your hands. Do this kind of like, I don't know, almost like slightly micro tearing motion or something. I'm not really sure how they describe that, but in any case, it's the juniper bark. And all these little bits that are falling out, that's super fine stuff that I'm going to go ahead and pick back up. I'll get my hand some more to get even finer. Put that in the center. And I'll take a little bit of that greasewood bark that I pulled off earlier. Do the same with that. And got some juniper boughs because the feather bush wasn't working that great. But gist of it is for your upper body, if you're not doing it naked, you can go ahead and just stick your head into your shirt after unbuttoning the top button and let the smoke pool up in there. In this case, the wind's swirling a little bit, so you might have to move it around to really catch the smoke. Yeah, occasionally, it's about much as you can bear it, go ahead and just stick your head out of your shirt and get some fresh air.